We steer the waves in the air and we never give them back. We are.
We are.
We are.
We are. We are.
We are.
Lofi Poli Sci. Yes, we are. Lofi Poli Sci podcast back at it. Took a little musical break that I hope all of you lo-fi listeners out there enjoyed. But now back to the grind, that is, that lo-fi global news. Nah, not just yet. It's the end of the year, and we have much to discuss. Today, we're going to revisit our top 10 things to watch for in 2021 and think about how they played out, because coming soon, next month / season 5, we'll be releasing our top 10 global events to watch 2022. And there will most certainly be some differences between these two lists. But now let's quickly go over the 10 events we laid out last January of the year, so long ago. We'll go over the list real quick first, and then we'll double back and talk about each one independently. From our January 19, 2021 list of 10 global events to watch in 2021, coming in at number 10, the Internet. Number 9, Acon City. Number 8, the remodeling of U.S. foreign policy. Number 7, EU-UK economic relations. Number 6, Russia and Navalny. Number 5, Thailand and democracy. Number 4, Afghanistan government and the Taliban peace talks. Number 3, the Syrian civil war. Number 2, Yemen civil war and man-made famine. And number 1, China's One Belt and Road Initiative. All right, now let's get back to our number 10, the Internet. This thing has really evolved over the past year, with tech companies rebranding and renaming themselves, to locking out government websites from different countries, or to leaving authoritarian countries completely. But governments have surely hit back with banning platforms, slowing down connectivity speeds to different platforms, shutting off the internet completely, and for all different kinds of reasons at that, and to fining them millions of dollars. And people? Well, they've been pushing back too, with the latest example being Rohingya people in the UK and the US suing Facebook for over $150 billion. Streaming services are bigger than ever, and everyone has a streaming app now. 5G is increasingly taking over. Things with the internet? They are not slowing down. They're speeding up. But where the internet goes from here? Oh, it's still a really big question mark. For as much corporatization as we have seen in the internet, governments everywhere are pushing back hard. It's a tug of war. And truly, there isn't just one internet. There's a lot of different internets depending on where you are in the world. And those different nets, well, they look quite a bit different from each other. If anything, I think this year, in 2021, we've seen a substantial pushback and push down of internet freedoms across the globe. The internet hadn't been saving people or freeing people around the world in 2021. The world has been increasingly controlling the internet in 2021. Now to our number 9, Acon City, the futuristic and technologically advanced city going to be built in Senegal, West Africa by the singer Acon. I really love this one for sure. But really, in 2021, we haven't heard much at all about any developments with this project. The last thing I heard was that Acon had secured somewhere over $5 billion in funding, but I haven't heard anything new since then. I haven't heard anything about them breaking new ground on the site. And that $5 billion, that was from last year. It seems like this technologically advanced city is kind of on hold, though we're still hopeful and watching. And our number 8 was the remodeling of U.S. foreign policy. And boy, has it been remodeled, huh? But then again, has it been? ? Toward the end of the Trump administration, there were some hard lines drawn with both China and Russia. The Biden administration has continued that. Immigration at the border with Mexico. Not a whole lot has changed there either between administrations. And the new NAFTA trade agreement made under the Trump administration, known as the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, seems like it's well underway. with the Biden administration. Now, has Europe in particular been content or happy with the new administration? Generally speaking, yes. But has that turned into wildly different public policies? Not really. It's just government officials being chummy with each other. Well, what about the Middle East, you may say? Generally, we've seen a continuation with Trump-era policies into the Biden administration as well. He promised to pull out of Afghanistan by a certain date. Biden kept that promise, and we'll talk about that more in just a minute. Well, what about Israeli-Palestinian relations as far as U.S. foreign policy there? Definitely some differences, right? Well, is there? I mean, we've seen some difference in the way people talk between the two administrations, and we've heard some mention about possibly moving an embassy or a consulate again, but we haven't seen any actual policy differences. And all of this points to a very important observation and political reality for any country when it comes to foreign affairs or foreign policy. You cannot reshape a country's foreign policy agenda or actions in just 1 year, especially when you're the United States and you have your little paws in everything around the world. You know, for those people who were looking for the Biden administration to come in and snap their fingers and poof, the world was different. Sorry, you gotta wait a little longer. And for those who were hoping to see that there would be some extensions to Trump-era policies, well, you've gotten to see a good many of them carry over into the Biden administration, at least for now. And a lot of this, though, has to do directly with the fact that so many foreign policy issues are not, I repeat, are not partisan issues in a U.S. context. They're national security issues that most people aren't aware of the information that these decisions are made on. That's why you normally do see quite a lot of foreign policy agenda carried over from one administration to the next, regardless of Republican or Democrat. It's because these things go past party alignment. Simple as that. Now to number 7, EU-UK economic relations. And wow, has it really been a year since Brexit is done? I say it quietly because if we don't do anything more than a whisper, Brexit may come back. Oh, it's been a year, but in fact, people are still bitching. The EU, the UK, they cannot get along. The UK wants to redo part of the deal having to do with Ireland and Northern Ireland, and France and the UK have gotten into a few tiffs about fishing zones. But overall, the European Union is standing their ground and telling the UK, hey, UK, you wanted this, buddy. Now live with it. And Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom? Well, yeah, he's still there somehow, and that's all I'll say about that. To number 6, Russia and Navalny. Alexei Navalny being the pro-democracy activist that was poisoned and then sent to prison by the Russian government, or allegedly poisoned by the Russian government, whatever. Well, over the past year, we've heard very little about this situation, other than Navalny is still in prison, and that is not going to change, it appears. You know, early on, his lawyers were making complaints, and he was going on hunger strikes, and Amnesty International labeled him as a prisoner of conscience, then took away that label, then gave that label back. But overall, while Western democratic countries have condemned this imprisonment, Navalny is still in jail. And really, I haven't heard anything new about this in quite some time. Now, President Vlad the Impaler of Putin, well, as we like to say, he's a dick-tator. Oh, fuck it. He's just a dick. And at number 5, Thailand and democracy. And I'll go ahead and say that in 2021, we saw absolutely no movement toward democracy in Thailand. More suppression of protest early on in the year, then the fizzling out of the protest altogether, then protest leaders going on trial for insulting the monarchy and breaking lèse-majesté laws. And really, after the military coup threw out the democratically elected government, ruled for a few years, then the leader of the coup ran for prime minister, won, and said the country was now a democracy, and the world just accepted it. Yeah, well, guess what? In 2021, we saw 5 other countries have military coups, and they are all talking about bringing democracy back. And I'm sure they're eyeing Thailand as a shining example of how to do just that. And I'm sure they're all expecting the world's not going to do a damn thing about it. So while the democracy movement in Thailand hasn't gained any ground in 2021, the military coup that took place and the current government of Thailand, well, they've surely had an effect in 2021. Now to number 4, the Afghanistan government and the Taliban peace talks. That's right, do you remember when this was actually taking place? As if they were going to come to some kind of an arrangement or agreement before the U.S. pullout of troops. But do you also remember how the Taliban kept stalling and stalling and stalling those peace talks? Well, now we know why. Because in August of 2021, on the eve of the U.S. and other countries withdrawing their militaries from the country, the Taliban went in on an offensive and just, boom, took over the entire country. In a snap of her fingers, the world went back to pre-2001. And what's been happening lately in Afghanistan? Well, we've been talking about that a lot this past season. Women's rights are increasingly disappearing in the country. The country is suffering economic depression and on the verge of a famine, with winter coming. And the United Nations has freed up some money for food aid and essential medical services, but we've yet to see that hit the ground. Now, number 3 was the Syrian civil war, starting back in 2011 during the Arab Spring, and still going on 10 years later. We really thought we may have seen an end to the war during 2021, as the Assad regime, the president of the country and the government, they took control of most of the country. They have solidified power in the majority of the territory. And he even had himself another presidential election this year, and spoiler alert, he won. And yet, this war continues. People are still fighting, and the government doesn't quite control everything just yet. And other countries are still sure as hell making power plays within this conflict. Which also brings us to our number 2, the civil war and man-made famine in Yemen. Another civil war with roots in the Arab Spring, and another civil war that has continued. And the food situation in the country has not really improved. Saudi Arabia and Iran are both still funding and supporting opposing sides in this conflict for regional power. And you know what? It's just been back and forth this past year during 2021. Now, we have heard some talks about Saudi Arabia and Iran having closed-door meetings about their relations moving forward, but we've heard no word on if anything has even come from those talks or what was even talked about. So a lot of question marks there. And our number 1 was China's One Belt and Road Initiative, a plan that is building and rebuilding trade routes on land, sea, and by air, and connecting Pacific Island countries with Southeast Asian countries, East Asian countries, Central Asia, the Middle East, Africa, all into one major and highly efficient and technologically advanced trading zone. Now, while this is still going on, it has been stalled out in many places, and we haven't heard that much news about it lately over the past year. But rest assured, the infrastructure needed to complete this project is still being built and still being planned. And deals are still being made. It's just the global economy has slowed down over the past 2 years, but it's picking back up, and so too will China's One Belt and Road Initiative. Because these trade routes, once they get up and running, in all likelihood, China will very quickly pass the United States up as the world's largest economy when measured by gross domestic product, aka GDP. And a conversation about when that takes place, well, that's a conversation worth having, for sure. And that's our recap / end of the year review of 10 of the biggest global events in 2021. But so much more has taken place this year. Go ahead and write in. What else did you see that happen that you thought was really important? And write in about what you think should be on next year's list of 10 global events to watch for in 2022. You never know. You just may make the list. And that's a brief snapshot of what's going on in the world today. Interested in writing into the show? Follow us on YouTube, Instagram, myself on LinkedIn. Email us, let your voice be heard. Always remember that Lofi Poli Sci is more than just me. It's the we that we be. Peace and well-being to all my human beings out there. Much love and always the best. Pickering, signing off.